All right, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started today. So we'll start with roll call. And then do we have an assist on the roll call?
Hello.
Okay.
Sorry. Chair Rogers,
Present.
Trustee Benavides,
Here.
Trustee Foyt, Trustee Turner Whiteley, Trustee Waugh,
Okay.
and then for the record, Trustee Dudkowski,
Yes.
Trustee Jimenez,
Oh, just kidding.
okay, and then Trustee White.
Here. You can go ahead, Chair Rogers.
All right, I'm assuming we have a quorum. All right, do we have anyone sign up for public comment?
There is no quorum.
It's
There's no public comments and it's for discussion only.
Oh, so we don't have a quorum based on the committee members?
correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification and confirmation. So we will, no one signed up for public comment. Let's go to committee action to accept the proposed agenda. Or I guess we can't do that.
Can we accept even though we don't have a quorum? I think we could just do discussion. Council Welt?
Yes, we can accept the agenda even without a quorum since there's no action.
Okay, well,
So then I
go ahead.
move for acceptance of agenda.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Was that Trustee Dukowski?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you for that. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, so that carries. So we have an approved agenda. So let's go to agenda item number 4 under new business. And this is for discussion only. And Floresto, is this anything that you will be leading us in?
Yes, that's right, Dr. Rogers. Thank you.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Floresto, to drive.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to meet today. I'm here to give you an update on the progress of funding the West Las Vegas project under the Federal New Markets and the State New Markets program. I invited back Ryan Kenter and Troy Villafara from Crescent Growth Capital, who has been instrumental in facilitating these deals over the last 7 years. I asked them to provide details about the structure of combining federal and state funds, the potential net benefit, meaning the amount the district can receive, spend on construction costs, and to give us an idea of what the time frame looks like at this point. In November of last year, the time frame was tenuous. I'm sorry, there's a question. Okay, I thought there was a question there. We thought the deal could close as soon as December 2024. I'll let Mr. Kenter speak to our current time frame, but I'll say that more legwork was needed to keep the process moving forward. One of the most important steps entailed gaining support for this project from the Nevada Department of Business and Industry, who manages the state funds. And the department did recognize the value that the West Las Vegas project will bring to the historic West Side community, and they deemed the structure that the team proposed was permissible, which allows the financing plan to move forward. I also asked Crescent Growth to discuss the role of the leverage lender, who is the Library District Foundation, because it's a conversation that the trustees and the foundation directors have had before, and it's relevant again in light of recent developments. So Ryan and Troy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Floresto. I guess I'll start with the timing. Right now, we're targeting a mid-March closing. There's a couple of some relevant dates that we have to be cognizant of. The first one is that for the federal credits that are included in this transaction, they have a deadline of April 17th, I believe, to be deployed into a qualified project. So by targeting mid-March, that gives us about a month of cushion, which is very much warranted given the complexity of these types of transactions. I think we're overall in good shape in terms of hitting that target. The one thing that we are also cognizant of is the complications associated with combining state and federal. Floresto mentioned one of the two primary hurdles that we identified on the front end to this combination. That was, of course, getting the state of Nevada Department of Business and Industries blessing, which we have received. The second is because we had to get two different investors. If you recall, the last transaction for the West Las Vegas Library, we used JP Morgan Chase as the new market tax credit investor. Chase does not actively participate in the state credit programs. US Bank, on the other hand, is really very active in that space. So we recruited US Bank to be both the federal and state investor on this current project because of the inclusion of state credits. And that has created some complications that were anticipated. And again, that was the second of our two identified hurdles to sort of gating items to getting the transactions completed. And I did report earlier to our internal team that we've had good discussions with Chase and US Bank, identified the issues that need to be negotiated through. And we were encouraged at the status of those discussions so far. I mentioned that just because as it relates to timing, if that process takes longer than anticipated, we wanted to have a backup plan, and that would be to bifurcate the closings so that we can close the federal piece first and meet the deadline applicable to the federal credits. And then we have, from the programmatic perspective, we had plenty of time to close the state transaction more than likely shortly thereafter if we had to do that bifurcation. But otherwise, we think the status is good. We're making good progress on all the diligence items and the traditional analysis and so forth. And that's all looking pretty good. With regard to the leverage lender, the purpose of that entity is not unique to this transaction. It's a party that's involved in all of these transactions. And essentially, the way it works is that you need two affiliated entities to participate in this program. One to act as the borrowing entity or the Qualic B, qualified active business, and another to act as the leverage lender, which is really the source of funds that are used to leverage the tax credits and generate the tax credit equity. You want them typically to be affiliated or at least friendly because the funds are somewhat intermingled in terms of where they come from and where they go throughout the structure. So you want to have parties that are affiliated and working towards a common cause. And the use of a foundation is very typical, for these transactions when the entity is a nonprofit. So that's fairly typical. But their role technically is simply to provide the funds into the structure. The funds go through an investment fund into the CDEs, capitalizing those CDEs along with the tax credit equity from the investor. And those are the proceeds that come out in the form of a loan to the Qualic B, which are used either to fund direct development cost or to reimburse the prior development cost. So that's kind of their role. It's fairly limited. That's basically all they do is act as a funnel, if you will. If they're receiving funds from the sponsor, the district, they receive those funds. They fund the leverage loans, and they receive on an ongoing basis interest payments on that leverage loan. So that's kind of what their role is. Floresto, could you remind me what was the third topic? The net benefit, was it?
Yes, the estimated potential net benefit.
Yes, so we are tracking that at about, hold on a second. Here we are. Yeah, so this is a function of the amount of allocation in the deal, which is we know that now. We have all those commitments in hand. The pricing for the credits, which we also know between the federal and state, we have that locked up in the letter of intent. And then thirdly, the fee structure of the CDEs, which we also know that's in their agreements. And then fourth, which is the one that we don't have a final number on until we get much closer to closing, but that's the anticipated transaction cost for the professionals that are taking this from, the concept that I laid out to a fully documented and set of agreements. So that's a bit of a wild card, particularly because we have a large number of state CDEs involved, given the structure of that program. It takes a lot of CDEs to come up with a meaningful amount of credits. And each CDE often has its own counsel and own professionals working on its behalf. We have been able to negotiate with those CDEs on the front end to, where possible, consolidate and use the same counsel. So we've gotten a lot of efficiencies in that regard. But otherwise, the estimate might have a little more variance than it would typically because of the large number of parties, the estimated transaction cost. That said, we think we've put a big enough number, that it would be conservative, but it is an estimate at this point. With all that going into the picture, we're currently estimating about a $3 million net benefit from the federal new market tax credits to the district. Again, that would be net of transaction cost, present and future fees, all those sorts of things. And then on the state market side, it's somewhat similar. It's a $3 to $3.5 million number. Actually, yeah, about call it a $3.5 million number. So it's somewhere in a mid $6 million range on a combined net basis is our current estimate.
And Troy, that's on top of the first round of federal funding that we closed last year for, was it $6.5 million?
Yeah, we're showing that about $6.5 million. That's correct. That's in addition to that number.
So that's potentially a total of about $13 or so million.
That's right. That's correct.
Is there anything else you wanted to add about any of these items, timing, the stack structure? I think you covered it pretty well.
May I ask a very simple question?
Yes, Trustee White.
So are we expecting monies from the federal government right now? How can we get them as quickly as possible? Is that possible?
Troy's described the current time frame, and we understand the tentative nature of federal funding at this point. And the development staff is actually tracking many other grants or federal funds that staff has been pursuing. In this case, we have a large team, including Crescent Growth Capital, and every community development entity has their own team of attorneys and other consultants that are involved. I am not aware of any risk to the funding for this particular program at this point. Troy, do you have any other insights?
I wouldn't say I have any more insights than anyone else on this call, recognizing the volatile times we live in, I guess is the point, right? That a lot of things are being covered, particularly threatened to be cut on the federal level. So outside of, again, whatever you may have heard and we've heard generally, we haven't heard anything about this particular program being on anyone's desk for potential cut. Historically, it has been supported on both sides of the aisle. I know that it is a whole new ballgame, so that doesn't necessarily mean anything today. But no, nothing to this point. We haven't heard anything for what it's worth. And I think, the big question for those of us in the industry is typically there's a $5 billion annual allocation that comes into the market. It's already authorized, going out into the future. Next year, it's scheduled to be a double round with $10 billion allocated. So in some way, that's great, of course, but on the other hand, it's a bigger target potentially, I guess, if you want to speculate about what could catch the eye of someone that's looking to cut things. But no, nothing. We certainly track that sort of activity, and there's been nothing indicating that this program is in the crosshairs at the moment. But from a timing perspective, but from a timing perspective, I mean, I think we should be in good shape if we're planning on closing within the next month or so.
And Troy, what's at risk here is the federal funding, correct? As opposed to the state funding available through the Nevada program.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's nothing particular about this program that is at risk other than everything's at risk at the federal level. But yes, that's correct. That risk wouldn't necessarily apply to the state. It's its own separate independent program.
Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. And again, I just want to reiterate that we're looking at potentially $6.5 million in additional funding, and the federal piece is $3 million, which potentially it is up in the air as far as we know, but the $3.5 million through the state of Nevada isn't affected or shouldn't be at this point.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, from a timing and priority perspective, it just so happens that the federal piece is the one that's subject to a deadline for the CDE. So that's the one we're going to ensure goes first if we have to break them apart.
Okay. Thank you for the report. Any other questions, fellow board members?
Dr. Rogers, can I add some more color to this discussion before we have other questions?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you. I just wanted to summarize 3 points. The net benefit here is incredible, as Mr. Villafara described. Our time frame includes 2 possible closing dates, and the fees paid out to library district affiliates should be carefully considered by the trustees. The foundation, and for that matter, the West Las Vegas Qualic B, are financial intermediaries that are not traditionally compensated for their roles in the transactions. Troy described this well in his presentation. Although the roles of these entities are important because they provide the loan to help structure the deal, the funds for that loan are actually contributed by the district. The structure of the program is designed to encourage and support investments that benefit low-income communities, as opposed to rewarding financial intermediaries. And that's how this could be viewed by our partners. It is the CDEs which are responsible for deploying the tax credit equity, and it's the tax credit investors, in this case, that would be Chase Bank and US Bank, who provide the capital for this equity investment. So in other words, these parties carry the most significant financial burden, and they assume the risk involved. Compensating certain other parties would be viewed as undermining the incentives for the parties in making these investments in the first place. The types of contributions from the district that are at issue here and that the Board of Trustees and the Foundation Board of Directors are considering can be viewed as diverting away resources from potential community benefits in the form of construction costs that are not paid, furniture, fixtures, and equipment not paid for, and additional programming that the new markets funding are intended to support. I just wanted to bring up these points because I understand that it's for the executive director and the board of trustees to decide what contributions are made to which organizations. So staff is only recommending that the trustees consider how those contributions are characterized, because it might sound semantic, but there is a meaningful difference between saying the contributions to a nonprofit is for a new market service versus an alternative source like operating reserves, for example, which would actually be the preferred alternative in this case.
Floresto, my understanding is that we're following the same practice, as we've done with the previous bills of Mesquite and East Las Vegas Library. And my recall is that there was no compensation that went to those intermediaries. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay. And my continued understanding was that we were going to follow that same practice with this bill.
Yes, that was the expectation. It's
Okay.
just that because of the discussion that have come up recently, and the foundation board will be discussing this at their meeting next week. I just wanted to add some color and provide more insights to the trustees so they can make a more informed decision on how to proceed from here.
And that's definitely welcomed, as we do have some new members who may not have been board members or trustee members when we had those early conversations where we were talking about the relationship and talking about, you know, this project.
Are there any other questions regarding the new markets program for me or Mr. Vilfara?
All right, I guess that means you did an outstanding job, the two of you, with explaining this very complex process to us.
All right. Troy, thanks for attending today. I'll let you have a great rest of your day.
All right, thank you, guys. Bye.
I had a quick question.
Yes, Lauren.
Somebody joined at the end with a phone number. I just wanted for the record to know who joined.
And we're referring to phone number 702-497-6333.
Correct.
And we just want to say, if you don't acknowledge who you are, we would need to remove you from the meeting.
Yeah, I asked.
Okay.
All right, I'm not sure who that is, but I asked to unmute.
See if you can undo that from your end.
Okay, any
minute.
acknowledgement from the
Give us one
caller?
second.
Okay. Just
Okay, and also there's no public comment. So
Dr. Rogers, there is a financial overview that I'd like to provide
Yes.
for the trustees before we
And I
end.
was going to turn it back over to you, Floresto, to go over the remaining items that you had to share with us.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the budget impact, these additional funds will allow the district to maintain the reserves needed for other capital initiatives and to continue developing programs across the district, not just in West Las Vegas. This matters because of what we're seeing in revenues. This will be just a brief overview of the district's current financial status because much of this information is presented in the Financial Services Board reports. We now have 4 months worth of consolidated sales tax revenues, which is enough to identify a trend. And the trend is downward. We're collecting monthly revenues that are lower than last year and is on track to amount to less than the budgeted revenues for 2025. You'll see here a very simple projection, taking the average decrease in monthly revenues of 1.7% for the first 4 months and extrapolating that through the rest of the fiscal year. So a 1.7% decrease for the year will be $500,000 less than last year and $900,000 less than budgeted. Looking at property tax revenues to date, they appear to be on track, but is slightly lower than the pace we saw last year. Historically, we've consistently collected all property taxes expected, and there are no indications that we won't this year, but we have seen outliers, which is why we budget with an abundance of caution, as we've been saying since 2020. That takes us to expenditures. The one variable we can control is expenditures, and under the executive director's instructions, staff held the line this year. No new positions, which helped us control the largest expenditure in the budget, which are personnel costs. We're on track to come in under budget, which is beneficial because of the reasons we just discussed. The trustees may want to authorize unanticipated expenditures. Revenues may come in under expectations, and the new administration may want to freeze all federal funding. And in fiscal year 2026, we're opening the new West Side Library, which will include an increase in new positions to support new programming. and staff has budgeted 2025 accordingly. Staff will also be submitting the district's preliminary budget to the state of Nevada in April. So we've already reached out to add another finance committee meeting to your calendar in April to discuss the 2026 budget in more depth. I'll be covering the capital projects fund among other funds at that time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Floresto? All right. Well, Floresto, my takeaway is, given that those projections of revenue are trending to be less than we budgeted, we have made the offset with controlling our fixed expenses in personnel to more than manage that offset, that variance.
Yes, that's correct, Dr. Rogers.
Okay. All right. We're hearing there are no questions. And I believe Lauren already shared that there is no one signed up for public comment. That's
Correct.
correct. All right. Then we will move to adjourn. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee White. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right. We are officially adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.